Under the bright lights on Friday nights, every high school football player dreams of taking their skill set to the next level. But being a student athlete comes with many challenges, and finding the right fit can be the most daunting of obstacles. Today we are joined by a young man from Oregon who shined at the high school level, but has faced bumps along the road in finding his place at the collegiate ranks. Joining us next on the Spent the Rent podcast, a football story with former Springfield High School standout Levi Kinkade. Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, SelfEsteem BoatWillie. My guest today is former Springfield High School football standout Levi Kinkade. Levi, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, man. Appreciate you having me.
So we're going to get to why we had you on. You've been coming to the barbershop for a while. That's where I meet most of my guests for the show. Yep. And we hit it off pretty quick. And you had some football aspirations that it's been fun to follow. And we're going to talk about where you came from, how your football career started, and where you're at with it right now. We're also going to cover the Duck game. We'll get to that a little bit, little sad face action going on. We're going to talk about Andrew Luck. That's some big stuff. Basically, since it's the kickoff of the football season, we're going to get right after it. We're just going to cover some football stuff. So, hey, thanks again for coming.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Like always, if you're listening to this on any podcast app like Apple or whatnot, you can watch video now at STRPOD.com. Pretty easy to navigate. Also, I always want to give a shout out to my title sponsor, Oregon Cashflow Pro, doing free money management advice videos on YouTube, and his website, OregonCashflowPro.com, is a good place to check out for that. And we'll get into a couple more sponsors and whatnot in a little bit. But hey, let's get after it.
Let's do it.
So, obviously you're a little guy, and so football was a challenge for you starting out. No. What are you, 6'8"?
6'8", 260.
260, Jesus. So football, I mean, when was it pretty clear that you were going to be bigger than most of your peers?
Middle school.
So like 6th, 7th grade?
8th grade.
So just shot up one day?
Just shot up.
Probably sore as hell.
Yeah.
And you played Little League sports, right? Just like every average kid.
I actually didn't play Little League.
Didn't get into it?
Nope.
What were you into as a little kid?
I was always interested in sports, but I really didn't find my passion and find football until 8th grade.
Right. And you guys moved a lot, right, as a kid? I moved a ton as a kid.
I moved so much.
Yeah. So I went to a bunch of different elementary schools. I grew up in Salem, but finally kind of found my bearings in middle school too, and moved to Eugene and Springfield. And then, Hamlin had a pretty good, they don't have the complex they have today, but they had a pretty good setup, and that was pretty good. And it was a lot of fun for me, but it was pretty clear at like 12 years old that I had no future in it, not even at a college level. So I just kind of played through middle school, and then high school, it was a done deal. I kind of just was like, nah, I'm going to focus on other things. So you basically found your footing at Springfield High School. Mm-hmm. Middle school, you probably shined. I mean, literally, what was the growth? It was like inches. You grew like 6 inches in a year or something, or what?
Oh, man. 8th grade, I was probably about 6'1". Going into freshman year, I was about 6'3". And in between, like, freshman year and sophomore year, shot up like a rocket.
Right.
Yeah, I got to like, 6'7". Then I grew another inch into my junior year.
Man, and the coaches just wouldn't leave you alone. I'm sure they're like, you're playing basketball.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started, right? Basketball was kind of your first major sport.
Basketball was my first love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about basketball that's better than any other sport as far as, new fans is that anyone can play it. You just can play by yourself. You can play with people that are similar abilities or lower or above you, and people play up and down to the competition. It's pretty tough to have a pickup game of football, especially now because people don't like being tackled.
Oh, absolutely.
No, I mean, we used to play tackle football all the time.
Dude.
Just no pads.
Oh, yeah. Me too, man.
Seems like it's almost safer, in a weird way. And we can get to that, too, the safety of football and stuff like that. But so in high school at Springfield High, which is not historically known for its football program.
Right.
I think when I was there, because I did my freshman and sophomore year there, I think we won 2 games over 2 years or something crazy. So you played tight end and defensive line.
Yep, I played tight end and defensive end.
And did they find a way to kind of work you in with the offense at tight end?
Yeah, they did. My junior years when I first started playing tight end, I was more of a blocking tight end at that time. I had hands, I could catch well, but I wasn't in the system as a receiving tight end my junior year.
Were you guys running a spread or running an I formation?
It was a spread.
So at that point, by the time you were in school, what year did you graduate?
I graduated 2017.
2017, because I was, 2000. So it was
Oh,
I was
man.
I formation. It was 4-yard runs up the middle every play.
Right down the middle.
And I was a slot receiver, so I never got a pass thrown to me. But
Yeah.
But so running the spread, and they worked you in. I'm sure they moved you out a little bit into the slot as well.
Just barely, just a little bit.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, they probably need you on the line, you
Yeah.
know, and it's intimidating. So there's people, with your height and stuff. So people are always focused on you, which opens up the other side of the field. So sometimes for a tight end, it's an unsung hero because they may not be getting the targets, but they're actually causing the play
Exactly.
to be successful.
Exactly.
Excuse me. And then, with your size, obviously blocking
Yeah.
is a big thing, and it's just big obstacle,
Yeah, there's a reason, they say we're the most versatile on the field.
Right.
Block, we can catch,
Right. And then early on when I first had met you and we started talking, you had told me about, some of your favorite players, obviously Gronk, and then Kelsey from Kansas City.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a beast. And I mean, the NFL tight ends are just something else because those guys can jump out of the arena or
Right.
whatever. Yeah. And so at Springfield High, you shined, started at junior year as a tight end. Mm-hmm. As that progressed, when did you start realizing that maybe college was an opportunity where, I'm sure. So here's the thing with a high school kid, a lot of times you have these kind of crazy ideas about
Right.
what it's going to be. And you're like, I'm going to be the best player ever to play. And I hope that was your mentality,
Oh, of course. You have to have that mentality.
But then the reality starts to sink in where it can give you a lot of opportunities where, it could take you to pay for school and all that. So being at a school like Springfield, did you find that the coaches were not equipped to have much recruiting happening for their players? Not to throw anybody under the bus, but just when you have a school that's not typically known for a lot of football
Right.
success, there's not as much highlight tapes being made and that kind of stuff. They're just focusing on the job at hand,
Right.
not your long-term future because they're not used to that.
It's a tricky subject, We're not as highly revered as Sheldon across town.
Right.
Even Thurston has a little more
Right.
looks than Springfield, and we're just the underdogs,
Right.
We've always been the underdogs, and yeah.
I mean, Thurston won the state championship last year, 5A, I believe.
5A.
And I mean, that's a great program, and they've got D1. Their head coach is a former Duck. So that helps that he played collegiate football. And I'm not even sure when you were there who was coaching at Springfield because I'm so far removed from it. But to be honest, I don't follow the prep sports around here, which is a telling thing.
Yeah.
The fact that obviously Sheldon has its big crowd. And my kids now go to Thurston, or one of them's graduated, but older ones at Thurston. And we've gone to a few games last year. My older stepson was playing for him. And man, those games are big, for local Springfield. I never remember it being a big deal. And so I'm sure, you get your small circles and stuff, but it's just not the focus like it is in like Texas, or something like that. And at Sheldon, it's a huge, huge program. Obviously now they're getting even more hype with Justin Herbert, now Patrick Herbert.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got the starting quarterback for the Ducks coming from Sheldon, it's a big deal, but Sheldon's always been huge, you know?
Always.
So tell us a little bit about your time at Springfield High.
Springfield. I love Springfield. I really just got involved in sports early.
Right.
And school. School's always been important to me.
Which probably helped a lot with your, scholastic, your grades and whatnot. Because when you're on a team, you have requirements you have to meet.
Right.
And so that I think helps a lot. I think being involved in any club is good. Mm-hmm. And Springfield's a funny place. I mean, the culture of Springfield has really changed.
Yeah.
It's gone in a good direction. And I think when I was a kid, you would see a lot of people, teenagers, walking around just with their shoulders kind of shrugged. And today it's like they let their freak flags fly. Like it's like cool being a weirdo, So that's one of the things I liked about you is here comes this mammoth guy, but you're so down to earth.
Oh yeah.
Kind and never come across as like, elitist, which is interesting because when I first saw you here, you're riding a little BMX bike around and stuff. And that's Springfield, That's the thing I love about it is it's humble.
Yeah.
And there's just high character people that are just living life, Not, it helps a lot when you don't have the wealth gap. In Springfield, it's like nobody's rich.
Nobody.
You know what I mean? So what was your biggest moment in football at Springfield High? Do you have a game where you went bananas?
Oh,
I'm sure there's a couple, but
yeah, definitely a couple. I don't know if I necessarily have a most memorable one. I just loved every game.
Right.
Every opportunity to play was just great for me, and
right.
I just went out there and I just had a blast.
Were you playing pretty much both sides of the ball at that point, or were you able to focus kind of just more at tight end?
My junior year, it was really, both sides of the ball. Even my senior year was really both sides of the ball. I just got more involved in tight end my senior year.
Right.
We had a coaching change. A new guy came in from Idaho, John Helmendaler. Shout out to him. He's a crazy coach, man. He's great. He's a guy who always fires you up.
Right.
And yeah.
So one thing about coaching changes, not that specifically, but when the offense can change, that can cause a lot of problems. Where you might have a situation before, or maybe it can present new opportunities.
Right.
And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit, about when you had gone on to the collegiate level and some of the struggles finding footing and a placement and whatnot. Let's just get to it. You were recruited by some D2 schools, didn't have a ton of attention. You can talk on that more about D1 schools. I think you had mentioned Portland State had given you some letters and some different things. Talk about that process when you kind of, you're talking to your mom and whatnot, and you're like, this is not coming. Like, the offers aren't coming. I've shined. I've done everything I can. I've gone to camps.
Right. Yeah.
Tell us about that process.
It was very humbling. It was a very exciting process, to be even looked at all.
Sure.
To be coming out of Springfield. I was one of the very few guys to actually get recruited for football out of Springfield. So it was really exciting. I got offers from Southern Oregon, Humboldt State, Western Oregon, Portland State. Yeah.
And then you had basically settled on Western.
Yeah.
And what was it that initially was your draw? Why did you kind of choose Western maybe over Portland State?
Well, Portland State only offered me a preferred walk-on spot.
Right.
I was excited about it, but I felt like I had a better opportunity at Western.
And they offered more. They'd pay a little more for your college and whatnot. Absolutely. Can you speak on that a little bit about the differences between offers? So you'll get they offer you to just come out and try, like a walk-on spot. Mm-hmm. And then a preferred walk-on spot means that you're on the team, correct? Mm-hmm. That you're not going to get cut, but you do still have to earn your scholarship. And that could happen after the first year. So you got to pay out of pocket, which we just talked about this earlier. Springfield is not known for having the wealth to afford college.
Right.
That's why Springfield High still has auto and wood shop and all these things that are like career jobs. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it's because that's the demographic,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great for people to get trades and all that. We could be here forever. It's a whole different topic. So Western in Monmouth, my mom, I actually went to kindergarten at WASC before it was Western.
No way.
It was back when it was Western Oregon State College, because my mom studied sociology and psychology at Western. So I know the area. My dad actually owns the print shop in Monmouth. It's called Walt's Print and Copy. Little plug to him.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so I've spent some time there. He lives there now in Monmouth and Independence.
Yeah. It's a neat town.
It's a neat little town. I think it's a criminal justice and education school.
Definitely.
And so we're going to get to that in a little bit too, because your focus is criminal justice. So that was probably a good...
Yeah. Well, criminal justice and psychology. Yeah.
Right. And that was probably a good selling point to you for as far as the education. And that's something that, talking to you as much as I have, football is a focus of where it can open doors for you, but education is like almost more important. Is that correct?
It's definitely more important.
And that's where football can take you, and then long term you're trying to set yourself up, and that's the beauty of it. So the story of a college athlete isn't just about what happens on the football field. It's happening between their ears every day.
Yeah.
But Western didn't exactly go as planned.
No, not at all.
And so this is kind of why I wanted to have you on. We were going to talk about it, and just you can just tell us the story about what happened.
Well, yeah, like you said, man, it just didn't work out for me, and I ended up being dismissed from the team. I made some bad decisions, and that hurt. That hurt real bad for a while, and I just had to take a step back, and I had to realize, that I have two options. Like, I can, basically, I can let this defeat me, or option two, like, I can take it on the chin, I can learn and I can grow from it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of to be expected with young kids, that they're going to, struggle. And when you get when you are playing athletics at a school, even a small school, then you're kind of BMOC in your mind. Do you want to speak on what happened specifically, or do you want to just kind of, it's just, you just bumps along the road?
What happened in the past doesn't really matter.
Sure.
What's really important is just focusing on the future.
So it was pretty early on that you had gotten there, and during camp, right? That it was just kind of like it wasn't going to be a fit.
Yeah, I just wasn't feeling the right fit, and like I said, I just made some poor decisions that really doesn't reflect who I am as a person, and letting people down.
Right.
That's what really hurt the most.
Sure. So you didn't give up eligibility because it was pretty early on. So
Yeah.
you didn't lose that year of eligibility, but that does. You can speak on this when the clock starts. You have 5 years to finish your. Is that right? You have 5 years to finish your eligibility, but once you enroll, is that clock already started for you?
It depends if you enroll and you start classes. My situation, I didn't even take a single class.
Right.
I just went through fall camp. I went about halfway through the season, and things happened. So my eligibility is still there.
So you hadn't taken classes because it was before it's like before because like right now we still have a month before U of O classes even start. We've already got the first football game. You have like 4 or 5 games going.
It's coming
and we're going to
quick.
get to that painful outcome in a little bit. But so what happened then? Did you just basically decided Western, like I'm going to leave the whole thing in my rear view? Yeah. Left Western. Did you instantly get into Lane or U of O? Or what did you do? Because right now you're enrolled at U of O, correct?
Yes.
So as far as taking a step from football, what was your next move after basically leaving Western?
Taking some time to reflect on what it is that I wanted to do. I was still pretty torn up about the situation. Sure. And I ultimately decided that I wasn't going to give up. I was going to stay patient and optimistic. I was going to look for other opportunities. And
so did you take a term off?
Yeah, I took a year off.
Took a year off
to work and train.
Right. And worked on your body, stayed healthy. I don't know what that means, but I've heard people say that. Yeah. So and then a couple other opportunities kind of have presented themselves. Right. And it's good that you've stayed focused. Let's talk about the education aspect of it and what you're kind of focusing on, and then we'll get to some of the future opportunities. So you had mentioned it before. You're studying criminal justice and psychology.
I'm studying crime, law, and society, and psychology. Yeah,
I was totally wrong.
Yeah, it's a form of criminal justice, so it's close.
Tell us a little bit about that. What's why is that drawing you in to that specific field?
Man, it's a deep conversation.
Sure, we got time.
Yeah, it's, right. It's just something that's always interested me. It's like the human brain and like how people operate. Right. And it's just something that I've always found interesting. Right.
So specifically, you got a long time between now and then, but what would you like to do as far as a career, like police officer, or law enforcement of just whatever caliber that takes you? That's cool. And then right now you've had some odd jobs. And what kind of jobs have you had? Even going back to high school.
Oh man, coming out of, during that gap year, I started working at Sonic. Like, I just needed a job.
Did you ride roller skates out to the cars?
No, man, but I wish. I always asked him. I was like, "Can I please get on some roller skates?" Like, that would be. Imagine that.
Right. Right. So Sonic, I worked at Dairy Queen. That was my high school gig, and then I worked at the M's games. Yeah, which was a cool thing. Yeah. So and then obviously a guy with your stature, security is an opportunity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recently just landed a private security job. Right. And it's great because it's a prerequisite for law enforcement.
Sure. Sure. What other kind of classes in college outside of law enforcement have really kind of got you kind of intrigued, and things maybe that you weren't expecting to really enjoy that you are finding that have been good?
Wait, could you repeat the question?
So what other classes, is there anything else? Because there's a lot of prereqs that maybe when you first take it, you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to take this. And then you're kind of like, actually, this is kind of cool because it's giving you more of a rounded education.
Sociology is really cool. I found that to be super interesting.
And that's kind of more of the study of groups of people.
Oh yeah, groups of people and group behavior in different societies and how people, work together and don't work together.
Sure. And I think that's crucial for law enforcement to know communities and know the weakest link and whatnot and the strongest and whatnot. So
different ethnic groups.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing, speaking of that, that's one thing Springfield has done a really good job of, and why they've evolved as a city or a town is because they're starting to really cater to the demographic. I've talked about it a few times on the podcast that they have Latin nights, and down Willamette Lane is doing great things. My buddy Zach was on the podcast a while back, and he works on the school board for Willamette Lane, but he had talked to us about different things Springfield's done to kind of draw in some of the ethnic crowd that maybe was getting ignored before. And that was a big issue when I was in high school at Springfield High. And then your guys' age group, everybody's all one unit, you know, and it's like, it's not like there's this group of people and this group of people. There's cliques, sure, but like everybody's welcome inside of it, and you can cross-pollinate each group, and that's good. Yeah. So back to football. Let's talk on your opportunities, kind of what the future holds, what you'd like to, do with it. It's good that you've stayed focused on education and that you're persevering with U of O. So being at U of O, can you speak on maybe potential opportunities there? I know that you had mentioned early on when I had met you that you really wanted to try your hand at walking on.
Absolutely.
And this is like second chance you kind of deal.
Right.
Not the university. I'm saying that you have to do all the legwork, and they're not knocking your door down because of obviously the past. And so tell us a little bit about that process and what you've been able to do. Right now, this year is just you're gonna focus on education, but potentially next year. Now, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my main focus, like you said, is education. If the opportunity did present itself to be able to walk on, that would absolutely be a dream come true for me.
Right.
I would be so humbled by that. And I would compete, and I would earn my place and be able to show them that I'm a different person.
Sure. Now, junior college has been an option. And what schools have you kind of been looking at?
One main school is on my mind right now.
Right.
It's a dual enrollment, so I'd actually be able to continue to,
stay at the U of O.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. To keep studying at the U of O, receive my bachelor's degree. While playing, right, and hopefully getting some good film together.
That's great.
Sending it to different colleges.
Yeah.
So,
that's pretty much it. I mean, if there's, basically, like you just said, you just want to focus on education, kind of learn from it, and see where you can go from there.
Exactly, and whatever happens.
Right. Well, I guess we could change gears, get into a little bit. I mean, obviously the Duck game was painful.
Oh man.
Last night kickoff against LSU,
right through the heart.
Or LSU Auburn, and they were handling it all game.
Yeah,
but I found the coaching was suspect, and those are my words. But I mean, it's a learning process. They hung with an SEC team. It's gonna be interesting to see what Auburn looks like at the end of the season.
Right.
Because I'm not convinced that they're that great of a team, and I don't know. It's a long season, but man, it just seems like Oregon can't get over that hurdle. The timeout management at the end was questionable. Where when you burn 2 timeouts, not understanding the rules, it's tough. I'll be honest. I thought that when you called that timeout, that was going to suffice and that Justin could come back into the game.
Right.
So, I mean, I didn't know the rule. And I'm sure that most of the people watching didn't know the rule.
Yeah.
But then after the fact, it's like, but I'm not getting paid, So that was tough. And then, obviously, one of the things I miss, and it's like a typical Duck fan, Chip, we got to get over our ex-Chip. But man, what I miss most is that he seemed to have next man up mentality about every position, no matter what. And that was tough with the backup quarterback, just not being ready to come out and in such a crucial moment. But that was a tough loss.
It was really tough.
And with the eyeballs on it, because it was such a nationally televised game. And if you look at the slate of games that were happening that day, it was just like cupcake versus dominant team. I think the only big outcome that I saw was Missouri got beat. They almost pulled it out at the end, but they got beat by Wyoming. Yeah. And I think it was like the second time Wyoming's beat a Power 5 school. That was a big deal.
Them Cowboys, man.
Seriously. So that was a big one. And then, but some of them, I mean, you see like Washington just throttled Eastern Washington, and then Middle Tennessee and all these other schools that are just, they get a payday by playing those teams. And then those players on those teams get to pad their stats. You see Tua had like 300 and something yards and didn't even play the fourth quarter. And it's crazy.
He's one heck of an athlete.
He's pretty incredible for sure. You know, and that's another thing that Oregon Helfrich, I think, lost his job over not offering him a scholarship. So, I mean, that's tough.
Yeah.
So I wanted to speak on some of the big things in professional football as well. You know, your biggest, one of your favorite players of all time is Gronkowski. And so here we have an opportunity. We're talking to you, a player that hasn't had that opportunity fall into place yet.
Right.
What do you think about the guys at the next level? Obviously, they've made the paydays. They've gotten multiple contracts. What do you think about guys walking away early? I mean, it's the health situation for a lot of these people. It's like you see Gronk talking about it and Andrew Luck, where they're just like, I just wasn't enjoying this anymore. And I mean, obviously, your career is still starting out, so you're still passionate, want to be out there.
Right.
But what do you think about, I mean, obviously, it's their right, and they're getting a lot of support. But a guy like Gronk, where he's just stepping away and doing other things, what do you think about that?
I think that, Gronkowski he'll always be, one of the legends.
For sure.
At tight end. And, we all have to make decisions that are best for us.
Right.
At some point. And
it's such a good thing to see these people not allowing themselves to go too far.
Right.
Because football shouldn't be a 25-year career. It's too difficult.
No, it's hard on your body.
And so the numbers, I mean, Gronk is obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
Like, there's no question. And one thing about football is it's not only about statistics. It is at some of the positions. You see some of the receivers, even some of the receivers with outlandish statistics, they still don't get in first ballot, like T.O. because of personality.
Right.
Gronk always gave it his all. And he's a good one. I think Andrew Luck is kind of not saying that he shouldn't do it. I think he should follow his heart, but I think he's actually passing on that because I don't think he's going to end up being in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Not that that's the ultimate goal, but I mean, at least he's going to be able to talk and walk and all that good stuff.
Right.
And it's, I mean, have you ever had a major injury playing sports?
Man, my senior year, I dislocated my right pinky.
Right.
Dislocated my thumb. Broke a few fingers in football. And that kind of is just what comes from football.
Sure. And it's funny.
And I was trying to catch,
Right.
And I was still catching.
Popping it back in the game and stuff.
Yeah.
Ronnie Lott for the 49ers. He's a safety, defensive back, kind of more like a linebacker playing safety. This is an old story, but he had broken a finger. I think it was his pinky, and they cut it off.
Oh,
and he went back out.
Heck yeah.
Straight up.
That's the mentality.
That was the mentality of the old days. Like, they literally just removed his, they're like, you don't need that one. Snap. And then,
don't need it.
Went out, finished the game. And I mean, some of that stuff, there's such a balance with football because I think that people, they love those kind of hard-nosed stories, but the tide is changing. I'm curious to see where football sits,
right?
In 20 years or 10 years because, our culture is changing and there's a little bit more of a, toxic masculinity that's kind of being assaulted. People are done with it. And essentially it's like being a macho dude, that's totally great. But being not that is also totally great. And that's what people need to understand. It's like, there's not, just because one type of culture exists doesn't mean that the other type of culture shouldn't, or other types of culture shouldn't be celebrated. And so with football, you have to have that kind of mentality or you're not going to survive. The thing I worry about the most, I was watching that game last night, Auburn's running back, and I can't remember if he came back in the game, but he had told, you could see because they'll hit their helmet when they want to come out of the game.
Yeah.
And he had told the coach, I want to come out, and the coach was like, no. And then he got hurt on the next play. And that kind of stuff, it's got to be team over self from the individual, but it also has to be the coaches. And that's a tough one, when you see they're being kind of, nope, we need you. And that was my biggest gripe with the Duck game too, on that play for Auburn's coaching. And then honestly for the U of O coaching where they just showed they were exposed for having no depth. Obviously Justin Herbert is a, All-American quarterback, but that play at the end on that fourth down where we called 2 timeouts, that was where it decided the outcome, in my opinion, because essentially you're playing not to lose, and that's a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, I think sometimes in crucial situations, things like that unfortunately happen. And Cristobal and his whole coaching staff are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's no doubt.
Sure.
It's just that sometimes that happens.
Right. I know you're not trying to criticize him because, you might want a job with him.
Oh, absolutely not.
So, no, I mean, it is what it is. And I'm sure that they, Cristobal, one thing I've liked about him is he's humble and that he'll take responsibility, and he's not going to be throwing the players under the bus. I was worried for a minute there about that punter having that personal foul where he
Blake?
Yeah, because he definitely, he hadn't done too much tackling practice, obviously, and so he ripped a guy around and out of bounds, and it ended up being a pretty substantial penalty, but I don't think it ended up turning into points. It's the end of the first half, but man, that could be a bad situation, and and then the kicker struggled, and then they had to bring back he'd earned his spot in camp, and then sometimes the young guy, it's like they're mentally not ready. Who knows? Kicking is such there's so many factors going on that I never feel for, or I never, I always feel bad for a kicker. I remember a couple years back, Boise State was playing against Nevada.
Well, the new kicker for Oregon who missed it, in the beginning. That's a big crowd. That is a huge stage.
Sure.
And it's like you're playing in front of 100,000 people in the stadium.
Right.
And that's a nationally televised game.
Yeah. And there's, 18 years old.
Right.
And he earned it. I mean, he's a freshman, correct? Maybe not, but he's a younger guy. And he earned it. He earned the position in practice. But when you get into the lights, what's the biggest? I mean, this is comparison wise, but was there ever a time when you were playing against a different team where you're like, whoa, this is a different kind of stadium? Like, have you played in the big ones? Because Midwestern League isn't huge. So most of your games, and you guys, did you have a lot of success with the team at Springfield? Did you guys do playoffs or whatnot?
Well, my freshman to junior year, we made the playoffs.
Right. Which is a big deal for Springfield.
Oh, yeah. We had some really talented players.
Right. And there was one season where every game was like decided by under 7 points, right? Because I remember hearing about that in the news. And that would have been 3-4 years ago when you were there. So, was there ever a stage where you were like, whoa, this is crazy? Or is it, I mean, they're pretty average.
I think Hillsboro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the playoff games would happen at.
Right.
Especially my sophomore, junior year.
Right.
And that was a big crowd. That was a pretty big crowd. The electricity was there. Like, it was just like, it was going.
Hillsboro. So it's played at Hillsboro High School's field. Mm-hmm. I went to, when Autzen was under reconstruction and they were adding more seats and turning it into a spaceship, I went to the Duck spring game up in Hillsboro. My dad lived up there, and he was, I just happened to be staying with him. I don't know. I was like 20. I just happened to be staying with him for the weekend, and he's like, hey, the Ducks are in town. They're playing down the street. And I'm like, no way. And we went to the spring game, and it is a pretty nice stadium for high school. I remember when I moved here, because I grew up in Salem initially. My brother played for South Salem High School, and they're not giant fields or anything, but it's a different caliber than what we see in Eugene Springfield. There's just not as much of a focus. I haven't been, to be honest, I haven't been to the field. I haven't been to a game at Sheldon. I'm sure it's bananas.
It's bananas.
Because they've consistently been just a powerhouse for 20 plus years, and it's not changing. My stepson was telling me that they have a quarterback right now that's a senior, that's a 4-star recruit, and that he played against a school from Seattle, and that I guess he outshined him, and his numbers are a little better than Herbert's. Wow. Numbers aren't everything. You look at Darren Thomas for the Ducks back in the day. His numbers were just slightly worse than Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, numbers really aren't everything.
Not at all. There's so many factors.
Right, me playing at defensive end in high school, teams would scheme to run away from me.
Exactly.
And so, I had to take my opportunities as they came.
Right.
Chasing down running backs was one of my favorite things to do.
Sure.
Really. Like, that was...
When you can see a defensive tackle that has like 3 tackles in a game and was the best player on the field.
Like Jordan Scott.
Sure.
I mean, he absolutely plugs the middle.
Right.
And he does his job.
And the numbers just aren't there. I mean, when you look, even in Aaron Donald for the Rams, like at the highest level, it's like... he gets a ton of sacks, but the numbers are just not there sometimes. For run stoppers, Jordan Scott's a prime example.
Oh yeah.
That guy, they just have to stay away from that spot, and he was crushing. That dude is a beast.
Yeah, him and Gary Baker, plug in the middle.
Right.
Those guys are
right. Yeah, there's a pretty solid team. The one thing about the Ducks that I am excited about and should give us some sense of excitement for the coming season is that we're not used to having an offensive line that is anything like what we saw yesterday. Now, I'm not convinced that the running game is quite where we need it yet, and that's not necessarily the fault of the line. I don't know if we have.
Well,
They got to work the kinks out because Oregon's still trying to find its identity as far as their offense.
yeah.
And they got to get the ball down the field more, and that's how you help your running backs is you spread the ball. And these little 7-yard curls and stuff, it's not going to be effective. But
Well, the thing about it is it matters about your opponent. And, yesterday we were playing Auburn.
That's absolutely true.
Auburn has one of the strongest defensive line.
Totally.
In the country.
And that's the thing is we hung with them,
Right.
and that's where I'm kind of excited.
Yeah.
Not kind of. I'm very excited about this. It's a true test. I think if the Ducks handle their business in the Pac-12, then, the conversation, as a Duck fan, I think we lost the joy of it when we started expecting a national championship every season. When my first year in the area, I moved here in 93. And that was the year that Kenny Wheaton got the pick, and that it's changed the culture of Oregon sports. Nike started throwing millions of dollars at it.
Yeah.
But it was that season that we didn't have the expectations for it to be. We just making the Rose Bowl was a big deal, and we got slaughtered by Penn State. It was like the first play from scrimmage they scored 4 touchdowns, but it was still just like, yeah, we're here, and then. The years with Joey Harrington took it over the top. True Duck fans, no knock on Marcus because he's an angel, but true Duck fans, Joey Harrington is what put us on the next level. And then from then on, he allowed. Joey Harrington was a homegrown Oregon guy. That's what's fun about Herbert too. Is he's from Eugene.
Oh yeah.
Did you play? So 2017, did you play against Herbert?
No, actually one time.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did a jamboree against.
So like
against
a couple drives kind of thing.
It was kind of like a half a game.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, and yeah.
I did watch him in high school a little bit on TV, and it was some of the covered games, not just local. Like they were playing because Sheldon plays against national teams. They're a great program, and sometimes there's trouble because it's like, are they recruiting? And there's questions on that. That's a whole different conversation.
Personally, like. Going back to the Ducks in this season, I'm really excited about it, just because we have, we started out real strong on offense.
Sure.
There's a little room for improvement, but that's to be expected.
Sure.
We have a new defensive coordinator, Andy Avalos, and man, his defense.
It was on point in the first half, for sure.
First half.
And people were getting gassed. That's the thing, and you're gonna have to look at depth. That's the question marks I have is. You got to make rotations real fast, and the depth seems like there wasn't enough. I'd have to go back and watch it again, but it seems like there wasn't enough confidence in the depth, and the rotations and whatnot.
And, and as far as like offensively, like we were there, we were present.
Right.
Definitely in the first half. It seemed like the first half went really well.
Right.
And then we kind of flip-flopped.
Right.
Like they started doing well. They got momentum in the second half, and then we kind of, backed off a little bit. But I think I do see the potential, for us to be
it's going to be a good year.
Really good team.
If you saw, it's hard to gauge. That's the one thing I mentioned it earlier. It's like we played against a true opponent, and as did Auburn, So a lot of these teams, I think that could come back and benefit a lot. You see teams like Washington that just everybody's already hyping them up, and it's like they were playing Eastern Washington. Now Eastern Washington's done some damage in the past, but still. I don't know what to think. Those cakewalk opponents in the beginning of the season. I maybe have them, but maybe they need to not count on your BCS win record.
Yeah.
That's the thing that they need to change in college football is either eliminate those games and add more playoff games. That would be preferable. Is eliminate the non-conference schedule. Maybe you have 2 non-conference games instead of 3 or 4. And then, and if you do play those games, like if Oregon plays like a Portland State, for example, you don't get I think Portland State's D1 now, actually. But
they are.
So if they're playing like,
Big Sky,
UC Riverside or some small school, and I don't even know if that exists. But
they played the Ducks last year and they got smacked.
Who did?
Portland State.
Yeah.
Smacked
at
home.
Yeah. And that's tough. But that was a fun game. We went to that game because my girlfriend. She got her bachelor's in math at Oregon, and then her master's in statistics from Portland State. So it was a fun game though, because it was big brother, little brother kind of thing, and we're in the stands, and she'd be like, "Nice catch, nice tackle, because she's rooting for
Nice
both
catch,
sides.
nice tackle.
She's rooting for both teams, and she knows her football, man. She's almost tough to watch games with because I always think she's gonna beat me after the game. But like, no, she gets real into it. Yesterday we were watching it. This is kind of a stupid little side note, but we were watching the game, and my dog, I think she's about a year and a half, and she was a puppy last season and was kind of just on her own thing. But now that she's a little more attentive to what's going on, and you know, my girlfriend and I are watching the game, and we're getting pretty lively. My dog was like, you know, we were like, yeah, just getting into it and whatnot. And the dog was just like, she was hiding under the pillow. Yeah. She's like,
very confused.
You guys are aggressive. Yeah. If she was actually freaking out more than she did on the 4th of July. It was hilarious. But all right, Levi.
You know, your dog's probably really confused while you're yelling at the TV.
Yeah, seriously. She's looked at me like, calm the hell down. You guys definitely don't do this during basketball season. Yeah. You know, because football, it's like all in on one game. Oh, I mean, you lose the game, and it's like, I woke up this morning super bitter, you know, but.
Yeah, didn't we all?
Oh, yeah. Well, Levi, I appreciate you coming out and doing this. It's cool. I want to follow your career, and I really hope the next step is big for you, and I hope, you know, an opportunity presents itself. The JUCO, what you had called it, what now it was a dual enrollment?
Yeah, dual enrollment.
That's a great thing, because I think the education you're getting at the U of O is top notch.
Oh, yeah.
And there's definitely a future that, you know, regardless of football, it's not something that falls into place. I think it will. I'm confident that it's gonna.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And, you know, no matter what happens, education is number one for me, and I just want to make my mom proud. Right. You know, I want to get that bachelor's degree, and I'm thinking about life ahead of football.
That's good.
And no matter what happens, I'm going to be playing competitively fun. You know.
Sure. And that's the cool thing. There is opportunities locally. There's semi-pro and different things that's all buzz. There's a big buzz on semi-pro in Eugene. I think that's good. So there's opportunities for football outside of just the collegiate level and whatnot. But I still think that, you know, you don't want to close the door just yet. I think that you'll still have some opportunities. So I want to give a shout out to one of my main sponsors, 45 Degrees Northwest, which is camping apparel. If you go to anywhere on STRPOD.com, there's links to 45 Degrees Northwest, and look them up on YouTube and Facebook. 45 Degrees Northwest is a great place for hunting apparel. They've got awesome hats. My buddy Jake just went out for his first bow hunting trip at the beginning of the season, so that was a cool video to watch on Facebook, and it seems like on YouTube. Seems like he's having a good time with that. And then we're going to end this with a song, local MC. This is, I thought it was fitting. It's called Work For It. So it's like everything I gotta work for it. And so Brody Jansen, who's been a friend of the podcast, he's originally from Roseburg, but he lives in Eugene now. And he's a dope MC that kind of connects old school flow with like the new school trap, whatever the mumble crap the kids are doing. But so he's talented. So Brody Jansen, Work For It. So Levi, thanks a lot for coming.
Appreciate it.
Work for it. Everything I got, I had to work for it. Work for it. Work for it. Anything I want, I gotta work for it. Work for it. Work for it. I just gotta stay focused. Work for it. Work for it. Work for it. I just gotta stay focused. Work for it. Yeah. Work for it. Work for it. Everything I got, I had to work for. Catch my wave, surfboard. Used to want the money, now I want the thing that's worth more. God's word pushed me to the most high. Lost a lot of homies, but I choose to keep my hopes high. Hope I never fall back to my old ways. Drunk as hell, stumbling through them doorways. I was getting high just to balance out the lows, so I had to say goodbye and start singing the hellos to the right things, to the right ones. All these demons in my head, I had to fight one. Then I fought two, then I fought three. Broke the chain from my soul, now I live free. Now I feel peace. Yeah. Thank the Lord, thank the Lord, thank the Lord. Now I feel peace. Yeah. Thank the Lord, thank the Lord, thank the Lord. Everything I got, I had to work for it. Work for it. Work for it. Anything I want, I gotta work for it. Work for it. Work for it. I just gotta stay focused. Work for it. Work for it. Work for it. I just gotta stay focused. Work for it. Yeah. Work for it. Work for it. Give me the wisdom that I need in this life in a way that only honors you. See, I was running around trying to impress all the wrong ones until I found you. Yeah, but then I found you. Then I changed up, put in the work. Yeah, I had to get my game up. Now I'm bound to mix the game up. Stepping back for the three is like a layup. I'm way up, I stay up to work on my craft. I pray up when I'm feeling laugh. They laugh at my goals and my dreams, but anything's possible when you believe, and I do believe. And I do believe. I stay up to work on my craft. I pray up when I'm feeling laugh. They laugh at my goals and my dreams, but anything's possible when you believe, and I do believe. Everything I got, I had to work for it. Work for it. Work for it. Anything I want, I gotta work for it. Work for it. Work for it. I just gotta stay focused. Work for it. Work for it. Work for it. I just gotta stay focused. Work for it. Work for it. Work for it.